broadcast journalist and TV producer with around 25 years experience working mostly across TV and some work in radio and film. I've seen and experienced this industry's approach to representation of people from diverse backgrounds, such as my good self. I'm British, Pakistani, and I'm a woman. So it's vitally important to me that my industry creates a fairer playing field for all, no matter somebody's heritage, sexuality, color of skin, no matter what anybody's background. I've done a series of interviews with industry professionals who will be sharing their experiences, their thoughts, their ideas on how to create a positive impact on this important matter. Please feel free to join me every week and my guests and be a part of the conversation. Now, let me introduce you to my guest today. He's an award-winning TV director. He's a media consultant and advisor. He's a serial entrepreneur and mentor, an all-round media expert. Welcome, Tony Orsten.
Hi, Samina. Very nice to be here.
Great to have you, Tony. First question, I'm just going to launch straight in. You know, as a professional in this industry, what does diversity and inclusion mean for you?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I think the nightmare that I went through in the 70s and 80s was reconciling myself to the fact that our audience was incredibly diverse and continues to be more so. Particularly between men and women, 50-50, let's say. And most of the production teams I was working in were all men, and they were all, as it happens, white. And they'd all been educated to a certain standard and a certain level and had certain expectations in life, and they came from similar socio-economic backgrounds. So we represented a group of people who were massively over-representing themselves to the audience. Now, people will often say, well, you know, as long as you're well educated and you know what you're doing, you can do anything. The answer is, I don't think that's true anymore. And I think you have to be able to have representation within your production team to be able to produce content that is more pertinent to the whole diverse audience that there is now. And again, we have to be careful using sort of diverse, we're using race, we're using color. All of these things are hot potatoes, and people are scared of them. And people look at it and they think, oh my God, it's like you have to be diverse. What does it mean? And then they look at rules, and their rules are horrible when they're written down on paper because they're slightly inhuman. They're not human things. So it's like at the moment, I'm bizarrely sort of colorblind, not in the physical sense, but you know, I don't see much of a difference between someone's skin color, you know, whatever they happen to be, and I don't register it. I know that sounds wonderfully altruistic, but it's true. I don't. Tony, so it's quite tricky.
Tony, let me interrupt you. Look, that, you know what, I really appreciate that. I've known you for a long, long while. And one thing I know about you, you know, and you've been my boss over many productions over the years. And obviously it's different now, we're friends. But, you know, one thing that always struck me about you, you were very inclusive. You were always massively helpful. But now, you know, after that, that was when you worked as a director, a TV director, but you went on to super highfalutin roles, you know, executive roles across some really massive organizations in this industry. Now, you know, I know you, so I know you're an inclusive person, but what difference did you make in those executive roles on this, you know, on this debate on diversity? And what is it that's different between you and other people who are not doing it?
Well, it's difficult for me to say what's different between me and other people because I'm me, and it's difficult for me to comment on other people. But I know what you're trying to say. So what I did was pretty simple. There were two issues. One of which and because I was mostly in the comedy world, comedy is very subjective, and being funny is often left to men. And by default, if you look at across the female, you know, if you look across the comedy industry, it's mostly men. So probably 60-40. Today, but probably 70-30 or even 80-20, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it was very hard for us to make sure that we didn't just tell smutty jokes that make the boys laugh. And so what I did is I wanted to put in, that's the wrong word, I wanted to include as many women in the production teams and in all echelons of the team, not just in the ones that are traditional, so that two things would happen. One is that there would be a more diverse production team, and you can't just tell smutty jokes. on the one hand, although women are perfectly capable of telling smutty jokes. Let me be quite clear about that. But also the other thing it did is it stopped any sexual harassment in the office. Not that I ever saw any, but it meant that because women were included at all levels and right up to the most senior level, there was no possibility for that sort of behaviour. Whereas in certain other perhaps in some of the financial institutions, even today, that sort of behaviour, the behaviour of demeaning women and being misogynistic towards women, still goes on. I think in the media industry, it's got a lot better. So I was adamant, entirely for self-serving reasons, which is that I wanted to make better programs, and better programs were made with more diverse teams that were able to draw from not just single women, but also women who had children and been on maternity and gone away and worked in a different way and learned about life from a different perspective.
Now, the thing is, look, you know, like any kind of change or any kind of positive change towards this issue is fantastic. But the thing is, fast forward, look, I've been in this industry, 25 plus years, you've been in a lot longer. But look, we're here today again talking about this, and they are hot issues at the moment. Is it possible for broadcasters, for decision makers across our industry who are not from diverse pools, who can they really even begin to understand the issue? So how can they fix an issue if they don't even really understand it in the first instance?
Well, one has to hope that people at the very top of their industry, you know, depending on where you think that the top is these days, because it used to be, you know, the BBC, and I think the BBC do pretty well. I have one daughter who works there now, so I get a bit of an inside track, and I think it is, you know, it is pretty much leading. You know, they just have to, and if they're not, they will make very, very bad leaders. I said before, you know, it's really a business decision. It's not one, oh, we better have a woman, let's get a woman, let's put her in the, oh no, maybe not. None of that. It really is important because the output of what you're doing needs to represent as best as possible what the audience is expecting. Otherwise, it will just be a group of blokes making television for what they think.
How can that specifically be transformed? The cultures at work be transformed, especially in the upper echelons, where you know you may not have that diversity of backgrounds.
No, but it's dead simple, really. It is to do what I did and lots of other people did, which is to make sure that women are included at all levels. And I've worked with some of the greatest, in my opinion, women in the television industry, who I think were beacons. And that's another thing, is to make people, you know, look to women coming up through the ranks as this is, look, I can get there. It's not something I have to fight my way to get there. If I'm good enough, I can get there. And I think that's part of it, is to make sure that it is
from diverse backgrounds, you know, from different nationalities or different heritage.
Yeah. Well, again, I think the joy of that is it brings, and you know, all the people I've worked with, and again, I'm a little bit colorblind, which sounds again weird. Is somebody asked me the other day how many people, you know, that I've worked with have come from diverse racial backgrounds, and it was like, I don't know. But you know, then I have to think hard, because you don't look at it like that. So my philosophy is you don't look at someone's skin color or sexuality or even religion. You don't care about it. What you care about is that they're really good. And then you ask the question, well, how do you make sure there are enough really good people from those diverse backgrounds to choose to put into? And then that's where the support has to happen. That's where, and I've done a fair amount of mentoring there, where you get people from those different backgrounds and different races and different skin colors, let's call it, because that's ultimately, we're all human beings. We look at things, the first thing we see is what you look like, and get them to be really good at what they do. And then the joy of finding a diverse production team, which is completely homogenous and everybody works together well and nobody cares about anything other than making the television program, is the goal. What you don't want is to put people in there because you think you have to, which I think is terrifying.
Let's talk about that. Okay, mentoring is always a fantastic, and role modeling are really good avenues into this. What about you know, do you think quotas, because we're talking about how to readdress the balance, the will has got to be there. So is it a matter of really implementing quotas on diversity a bit more rigorously, or is there a way to get representation on merit across diverse pools without lowering the bar on talent?
I think it's a really difficult question because quotas are a very easy fix. You can just say, you know, X percentage of people have to be from this, etc. But that's very hard. It's a millstone often around producers' necks, especially, you know, if you go back a year, if you remember a year ago, when production was absolutely flying. It isn't at the moment, but you know, trying to get crews together and trying to get producers together to make stuff has been very, very difficult. So, you know, suddenly being told that a certain percentage have to be from a particular background is very, very hard indeed. And it can lead to resentment, and that's what you don't want. So my philosophy is train up the people from the diverse backgrounds who want to be in the media industry, and then put them up there, create very special channels, if you like, to get them there, create organizations that promote people from different backgrounds into the, and infiltrate, I like the word, infiltrate the production environment in the UK with really brilliant people from diverse backgrounds, and change people's minds, producers and senior people's minds, from within, rather than forcing them to do it, make them feel stupid for not doing it.
And of course, you're involved in a couple of social enterprises that
Yep.
do exactly that. Would you like to quickly share some details about those?
Yeah, the one up in Manchester, which is called Sharp Futures, is a social enterprise. For those of you who don't know what a social enterprise is, it's a company. It's an ordinary British limited company, but it's set up to provide benefit to society, benefit to the people working there, benefit to the community. And it is profit making, but the profits are always reused. There's no shareholders. There's no output of money to anybody. And so what we've set up there, and what the people there, brilliant people, have set up there, is something that facilitates the entry into the media world from people who are from surprisingly, because I say that, surprisingly diverse. I am using the word diverse, from backgrounds that normally wouldn't easily get into television or film.
Underrepresented groups, essentially.
Underrepresented groups, and they are amazing, because so what Sharp Futures does is get these people up to a certain level by training them, mentoring them, working with them, and then offering them directly to production companies and to broadcasters, and it's gone incredibly well, and it's really made a difference. And it's one of those things that I get terribly emotional about, because it's, you know, I look back 45 years when I started, and I was lucky enough to have a good education and to come from a middle-class background. So for me, it was like, yeah, okay, you've ticked all those boxes, in you walk. And now we're looking at people who back then would have not a chance of getting into it, and now they do, and they're getting into it. So that's really exciting.
And of course, you know, there is Sharp Futures, and there's other organizations across the UK that support people from diverse backgrounds, which is just fantastic. I think there should be more, but, you know, we're working towards that. Now, there are some executives in senior, you know, like senior executives who are from underrepresented groups.
Yeah.
You think there's a lot of pressure on them to make change and make difference on this front? And are they really in a position to do that, or are they indeed doing enough, given that, you know, some of them have been in their roles for quite some time?
I think it's always you have to be a bit careful, because always, if you are in a senior role and you are from you know, racially from another part of the world, there is an expectation. It's just a human nature thing. There's an expectation that you are going to use that to increase the representation and if you like, maybe even the content that's coming from that part of the world. That's ridiculous. It's not true, because most of the people in this that are at that level who are racially diverse are British, like your good self. And actually, rather than bringing something from, in your case, from Pakistan, you're just going to bring something from Britain, but where your experience has given you extra insight over and above what the people perhaps who haven't had your background would have. And that's exciting to me. And I just will wish people would look at, would not put, it's difficult for me to say this because people could be listening to this, but commissioning editors and people who have a responsibility for commissioning television need to have that in mind, rather than what their skin color is, or their background, or their race, or their religion. It's their state of mind and their openness to take risks, which I think is enhanced because they come from a different background.
Do you know what? I'm 100% inclined to agree with you. And coming from, you know, a dual heritage myself, I can tell you my perspective on things was very different. My experience growing up was very different from those
Yeah,
around me. And no doubt, you know, there's so many other people in this
yeah,
country who've got even more diverse backgrounds than I have. And there's so many new and interesting and different stories to tell, which I think
yeah,
really could add value to the industry. Um, so now, just to wrap up, for all those young people, you know, there'll be many people watching from all kinds of underrepresented groups and represented groups. What advice could you give? And you've been in the industry for donkey's years, you know, and I'm no doubt you would have come across all kinds of scenarios as boss and had to deal with problems. If anybody finds themselves on the receiving end of exclusion or being discriminated against, what advice would you give them to manage that?
Discrimination is a terrible thing, but it's human. We are human beings, and we tragically look at somebody and what they are as a physical being, and we decide involuntarily, often, that they are in a category of some sort. And I think that's the ultimate discriminatory sort of process, is looking at somebody and deciding what they are before doing something. So my experience of this, because I'm not entirely British myself, is that you have to be more, which is sort of good, you have to be more resilient than you would be. You have to be firmer, but more reasonable, possibly, than you would be, to make sure that you are able to really make people understand who you are and what you are. Because that's the big, in my opinion, the big question is, if somebody sees someone with a different skin color, or with a disability, or that has an accent that you're not familiar with or that you're confused about, the first instinct is not to be 100% happy with that. And the way to overcome that is to not give up, but not to challenge, but to be inclusive. So as the person being discriminated against, to be inclusive with the person that is discriminating against you. And to try and get them to understand who you are and what you are and why, rather than what position you're in, or what point you're making. Is about who you are. And I think that's the big thing that's being missed. It's the person.
And that's great advice. Be responsive as opposed to reactive.
Yeah,
Yeah, that always generates different results, doesn't it? But Tony,
yeah,
listen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
my pleasure.
Thank you. And as you know, every week I do a different interview with a different industry expert from TV, radio, and film about this very important matter, about diversity, inclusion, and representation of people from underrepresented groups. I'd love for you to have your say. If you've got any questions you'd like me to post to my guests, then please feel free to contact me. And you can do that across my social media platforms. Feel free to follow me also on YouTube. And yeah, I really look forward to hear what you've got to say on this matter as well. All that's left for me to say is many thanks again, Tony Orsten, for giving me his valuable time today. And of course, a huge thanks to all of you who've been watching. And I look forward to your company during my next video.